All right, welcome everybody. We're going to kick this off. Let's do intros. Disruptors and their impact on logistics. Your three biggest disruptors in the LinkedIn space right here. I'm Jess Wyndham, CEO of Solving Work, logistics and transportation consultancy. I'll turn it over to John.
Hey, how's it going? So John McClymont, operational innovations. I'll say founder, even though I think that that's really a lot for what that is. I help you make things better and get more value from operations.
And as always, Matthew Zozitsky, the logistics ambassador.
Oh, but you got more than that now. You've got more than that.
But now also co-founder of Monarch Connect, which is something I've been working on for the last little bit. So I now have a wonderful company to associate myself with, and which I'm excited about. It should be a lot more of my logo going forward. Let me hold it up here.
Can you give us a 30-second high-level value prop?
Yeah. Wow. Elevator pitch. I've been working on these. High-level value prop. We are bringing in a little bit of a high touch to the logistics community, helping with freight movement across border domestic, a little bit of domestic USA, freight forwarding, really trying to focus on that consulting basis and provide a lot of visibility into the marketplace, filling in that niche where a lot of the big companies do not have the same focus as we would, and able to provide some of those services that the SMEs really do deserve. And it's been exciting so far. It's been great so far. A lot of great things happening. And now I get to be super excited, like I said, about my brand and hold it up.
There you go.
With my co-founder.
I love the merch. You got the hat.
The hat. Yeah. So it's exciting. That's awesome.
Nice.
Awesome. Well, cross-border is prescient, certainly with our topic today. So we should go around. First off, if anybody has anything to contribute, drop it in the comments. Questions, concerns, agree with us, disagree with us loudly in the comments. We'd love that. But I think before we talk about Temu and Shein, we should talk about how to say Temu and Shein.
Shein and Temu.
Yeah, because everybody wants to run around just being like, "Oh, it's Shein and Temu," but then those aren't technically right. I don't know. Is it like a tomato thing, or is it because it's a name? It's like, no, you have to do it the right way.
I don't know. I feel like an idiot every time I say it because it doesn't sound right when I go Temu and Shein. But I don't want to sound like an idiot, right? Saying the wrong one.
Yeah, but you actually feel like you're being like a little pretentious and like, oh, it's Shein. Yeah. And then like someone's looking at me being like, it's Shein, dude. And it's like, maybe. I don't think so, but whatever.
So I got a quick little funny story off that, because in Ottawa, there's a building with the Loeb family owns, and I used to call it the Loeb family. And I used to get hammered on that pronunciation. They're like, it's a name. It's
Loeb. The grocery store, Loeb?
Yeah, Loeb. I used to call it Loeb, right?
Oh, no.
And then growing up, like IGA, my parents used to call it IGA, because it's, the Polish people, that we were like, IGA, we're going to the IGA grocery store.
No, you didn't.
It's IGA. So pronunciation...
Oh, wow.
Pronunciation matters. So
okay, I agree.
Jess researched it, so we're going to follow her position on this for sure.
Fair enough. So it is Shein and Temu.
All right. There you go. Well, aside from tripping us up pronunciationally, who are they? What are they doing? Anybody got? I did some high level comparison because I have been lumping them together, and
they're pretty different.
Actually. They're very different.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to elaborate?
Yeah, I mean, really simple, right? You have two very large, let's call them, at least where people see the commonality is Asian and China-based retailers or merchants, right? But Shein is really a first-party seller, right? They sort of make and manufacture and sell their own product, and Shein is essentially a marketplace, right? They full of third-party sellers, and they just basically facilitate deliveries, right? They're not really making their own product. So I'd say that's probably just really simply the easiest way to cut them apart.
Yeah, Temu, third party, Shein, making their own products.
Yes.
And as we're chatting, we're gonna all be commenting in it to have kind of more engagement, a little bit of visibility. So you'll see some of my comments like, who is Team Temu and Shein, and that's just us talking about it in that current moment. So it's gonna be exciting.
I was also surprised. So Shein has been around for a long time. Like they started out as a wedding dress seller like 20 years ago. In their current iteration, they've been around for like 12 years, whereas Temu has been around for like 2 years. And Temu, in like their first 8 months, and this is COVID fueled, obviously, but they hit the same number, or almost the same number of subscribers that Amazon has active on their platform in 8 months, which of course Amazon took 20 years to do. And, it way surpassed what Shein was doing, which I thought was
but
interesting.
Different marketplace.
Different marketplace, and they're also like driving trucks of cash to the incinerator to be burned. Like, I mean, they bought their position very quickly, which, I mean, look, in all fairness, I mean, I think that, is it really that different from some other type of VC approaches that you see these days, right? Like, we're going to heavily fund a business model that maybe in itself is not immediately profitable, and we're going to get to some economy of scale and it's going to be all good. These guys are just like, yeah, we like that strategy. We don't like the years of waiting. So they're like, we're just going to pour even more money into it, like ridiculous amounts of money into it. And honestly, it paid off when you couple it with the fact that obviously at the core, they were selling stuff exceptionally cheap, like to the point where that value proposition from a consumer standpoint was like, what do you mean I can get something for $3?
Are they even making money yet though? Like, are they like, is this all VC money that's funneling it? And like Walmart, even Walmart has a lot of cash. They said, 2 years before we start making any money on our e-commerce?
The Temu stuff's not really like VC. I mean, they got some big money and big backing behind it. How, is it making money in itself? No, I don't believe that they're still kind of profitable overall, but
I was just going to say, I like 2023, it's estimated that they lost $7 an order. Now, Temu says we're not buying, folks, but independent journalism says they lost $7 an order in 2023.
But their goal was trying to get essentially to, either cost neutrality or start to tip towards profitability in 2024. Like they or towards the end of 2024, they really do seem to have a much stronger focus on being like, we're going to pour a ton of money in and we know what we need to get back. I think the challenge that they're having now, obviously, and the same thing with like Shein, but maybe to a different degree, is the regulatory aspect. And it's like, hey guys, how are you actually able to do what you're doing? And I mean, there's been some interesting videos. Matt, you shared one with me a few weeks ago where it was like a sort facility. And maybe give a quick like 30 seconds on that.
Oh man, you're putting me on the spot. If that's the video about all the people lined up and all these packages are just rammed through and there's no automation to it. It's just people, labor, hammered.
But it wasn't just people. It was like so hot. It was like, I'm not even gonna wear a shirt because I'm sweating so bad.
And tank tops and they're just standing there and it's just going through these, and it's just like the package pile. And we'll share the video after, but the package pile was just massive and there's no joy in those people's faces whatsoever. It's like, I don't know. Have you ever been to like a FedEx facility, UPS or Purelator in Canada or DHL? There's some joy in what people are doing. Like, I mean, even if they're sending an assembly line, they're chatting, they're shooting the shit with the people around them. None in that video. It makes you wonder. And that's the other thing that we talk about is the ethical piece about Temu and Shein is, or what they're doing is it ethical? Should we be buying those stuff? Are they doing it in regions that is using child labor, slave labor, and all these things, and just pushing into other areas that we don't know about? And then we're finding notes in the jacket. I've heard this too, like people finding notes in clothing, going, "Please help me. I am under duress." Right? Like it's a little bit different. Like, at what cost are we accepting this fast fashion?
Yeah, for sure. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to see at what cost, and it's more than fast fashion. It's like instantaneous fashion, and in higher numbers than we've ever seen before. Because these issues have always been an issue. They've been difficult to get our hands around for typical retailers who plan these things 3 to 6 months out in advance. And so now we're turning things so quickly, so fast that it's almost difficult to retain that. But yes, so labor is an important piece of the governance. Sustainability and climate change is a huge piece of this. And, if they want to continue to sell into Europe, they're going to have to do something, because they're obviously a lot more progressive than North America has been historically. And then, what about on the third party sites? What about the people who own these designs for these products? What's your responsibility in not putting product onto your site that isn't owned by the people putting it on there?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think there's a bit of it. It's a tough issue because there's a difference between, hey, I'm making a direct copy, which also is really interesting because of this whole like dupe culture that's going around like with TikTok and things like that, and people actually really clamoring for it. But then I think that there's something in being like, oh, X is this kind of, there's this on the runway or this kind of thing got released. Like I'm going to modify it so slightly, because it does really bring up too. It's like, well, what's the degree of change really required before, like where it's completely owned by someone versus like fair game? Because I mean, I think it's fair to say that, there hasn't exactly been a new blouse per se or shirt or shorts or like whatever. Like, I mean, there's kind of like some basics, just key functional design elements that you have to have and that every product is going to have. So it's like, where does the level of differentiation start, and like where it goes from like, this is our own stuff versus we just blatantly copied something without obviously putting logos on it and stuff, right?
And Bill made a great point in the comments. He said it's called forced labor is the correct term globally. Another thing I want to point out, John had a great question. Has anyone here bought something from either company? I have not. I think that's a fantastic question. I don't know the experience. Have you, either of you guys bought anything?
I have not. I don't even like the apps. I find them very like just busy and stuff, like from what I've seen. So no, I have personally not for myself. No.
Yeah, I mean, I have not on principle, like for sure. I was like, this is not a sustainable way to engage in consumerism. So it's something that I've taken a step back from. And that's that. So first off, on what to the point you were making, John, is this not the conversation we're having around AI? How much can we borrow from the collective and put our stamp on and say this is now ours? I think that's an important differentiation to sort of, and we're going to have this conversation in pretty much every single area of humanity for a long time before we get to an answer. And then to the conversation about who's buying. So I did a little research before our call, like who the heck is buying? Because I was like, man, is this Gen Z? Because I thought they were going to be socially conscious consumers, but it's not. Baby boomers are the number one, which I can't believe that they buy through the app, but they're one of the top folks. And elder millennials are the ones using this. Now, are the elder millennials buying for their kids? I don't know.
But I think that there's a big difference there too, right? Like on the one hand, you have a culture where like everything is digital and everything has been available, and that's essentially the way they've grown up. And then on the other side, there's for people that are a little bit older, there's still a lot of like newness and novelty, and it's like, hey, I never had an opportunity to buy these things, right? I do think though that broadly speaking, I think that like Shein has a far broader and probably a little bit more balanced kind of user base. Like I actually think it's quite interesting when it comes up in casual conversations, the people that, have purchased off the sites or whatever. And, they have an interesting kind of like value proposition just because of the fact that, their stuff for the most part, like obviously the practices are one thing, but these are, to your point, it's a long established business. The people who make it and the partners that work the factories and that have all of the textiles and do all of the work, like it's not like these people just started business today. Quite frankly, these are the same factories that are building and sort of putting together clothes for all of the other big fashion brands that everyone loves to wear, right? Like that's what I think a lot of people don't really understand when it comes to manufacturing and contract manufacturing, is that when you look at Gap, or you're looking at Abercrombie, or you're looking at this, or you're looking at that. I mean, Zara's a little different. They say they're doing a lot of manufacturing in Europe versus H&M that does it in China. But these factories are actually very professional organizations. Like people will go there, they will talk to them about the textiles, the fabrics, what they want to achieve, what they need, and they're really solution providers. Like they're like experts in saying, okay, well, if you want to do this, we do it this way. It takes this long. You need these kinds of components. You need this. Like it really is a very professional
But your idea is not protected. Like we were talking about earlier, once you put that in there, next week it's going to be under a different brand, right? That's
could be.
I would challenge you that before like Shein came around, who did everyone used to complain about? It would be like an H&M or like a Zara, right? Because their like sort of road to market was significantly reduced. Like everybody else used to be 6 months out, and these guys were 6 weeks, right? Like they had a much faster cycle, and people were saying very similar things about them getting inspired very quickly by runway looks and getting it into full production and having it in the stores pretty much faster than anyone else can. Now, all of a sudden, the only thing you have is kind of like a problem that no one ever expected. It's kind of like returns. It's like, oh, no one thought that, returns would get so bad just by offering free shipping, free returns, but it is. And it's like, well, no one thought someone could make 3,000 new SKUs a day, but they are. So it kind of just really changes like the dynamic in the sense of like, it's the same problem. It's just wildly accelerated.
Well, I think so. Go ahead, Matt.
I was going to say, first of all, Cynthia already said she's no way buying any of that. So I think there's a lot of sentiment across that. But I was going to say one thing, John, that you and I touched upon a few weeks ago when we talked about this topic, was that it's also the upper middle class. A lot of it that is buying. It's not just like you'd think it's another demographic that's buying it, because it's a lot cheaper. You can get, but it's not. It's these people who are using this as I'm buying it. I don't need it. It's junk. I'll use it for 30 seconds and I'm just chucking it.
But are you guys like, everyone seems like so surprised by that. Like everyone kind of expects that like, oh, because it's like cheap, it's going to be people that maybe have a little bit more financial hardship that are going to go for it. But, in reality, someone that can buy with a certain degree of uncertainty, right? I don't know the quality. I don't know the fit. I don't know the manufacturer. Who's that really going to be? It's going to be someone who can take more risk. Someone who, if they get quote unquote burned or it becomes a loss, isn't really going to be put out. If you're in a position, financially where you're very strapped and limited, I think you're probably a little bit more risk averse to just randomly buying whatever, because it's like, hey, I've got X dollars I'm going to spend. And it's like, do I want to, like, this looks really great, but if it turns out to be a disaster, I'm kind of not in a great spot, versus someone who's like, it's either this or like the next mojito or something like that. You know what I mean?
That's a great point. And I would almost wonder, does that mean in lower socioeconomic brackets, do those folks shop brick and mortar more than online? To your very point, that would be an interesting thing to research and take away.
So I want to get into it. I want to get into what are they disrupting? Because, we were talking a little bit about this before. I don't think they're disrupting much, just offering something cheap. We all had different opinions on it. Are they really disrupting anything in the logistical space? Are they really getting in there and creating something innovative for the marketplace versus just eating up capacity because it's cheap and people are just buying it all over? Going to Europe, apparently cargoes are full for Shein team with stuff. Coming into North America, it is absolutely full. Is there a logistical disruption here, or is this just a hoorah?
I think.
Okay.
Go ahead. You go first. You jump first. You're ready.
So, Temu, no, they're just shipping ultra low cost goods and clogging up the air freight market and the advertising dollars and buying attention. Shein, on the other hand, I think does have something interesting with their small batch to large batch. They've digitized a lot of these factories in order to work with them and get this turn time to hit that 300,000 new SKUs a day. And they're I don't know how much of a pivot it is or just an additional vertical for them, but to then resell this supply chain as a service to small emerging brands. Like there is a piece of this that I actually support wholeheartedly, because can it bring more innovation to the market by making it easier to work with overseas factories, to run small batches, to create, to give a platform for new brands. So that's what I think could be a major disruption. The technology that they built, the network that they have of factories, and then, ultimately, let's throw some AI in there to iterate on the designs to make them more consumer friendly, based on the feedback that they get between hovers and looks and likes and, aggregating all of that data. I think that there is something there to what Shein is doing.
Yeah, that can be interesting. I think there's like two parts to that. One, do I think that they're being disruptive in terms of innovative? I don't think that they are on the logistics side. I agree more with Jess on the technology and process. So there's definitely the manufacturing component. That's one. The other thing that's honestly really disruptive when you think about e-commerce or direct to consumer retail is their site or their apps. Honestly, high gamification, like lots of random offers, like a lot of like, I don't want to say bait and switch, but being like, add 6 items and get free shipping. You took those 2 away. Oh, now you pay for shipping. You're one thing away from. So I actually think that from a shopping experience, whether you actually enjoyed it or not, I would say that there's some innovation and disruption happening there, because it's going to train people to, like, it's going to change consumer expectations and behavior in the sense of being like, no, there should be some secret ways I can fill my cart. Like there should be some way, like I actually do think that gamification of the cart is interesting. And I think it keeps the people on their site longer, and it keeps them there longer for discovery, which I find is really interesting, right? Because, Amazon is really great, but they dominate D2C search when people like are specifically looking for stuff, right? I think that these guys are doing a much better job on discovery, which I think really fits in with their model of attention grabbing, right? Like even if you think about it, so Temu, for example, like Amazon, is a marketplace. I didn't actually check. Now I should have checked, but I've never heard of it. Well, Temu as a brand, as a marketplace, they run their own TikTok video feed. They have 1.4 million subscribers. You know what I mean? And they have this whole brand of like discover, like Temu discovered or whatever, and they show all kinds of crazy products and how to use it. So they're also being innovative in the sense of saying that, hey, just because we're a marketplace and other people are selling their stuff, they're taking more of a hands-on role. So that's where I see innovation. I agree with you on your side on the logistics point. I don't think they're being very innovative, but they are being very destructive and sort of disruptive on things like capacity and pricing and whatever, because they're going to put more pressure on, because, the domestic retailers, like these guys are paying $15 to FedEx or to USPS or UPS or whoever it is to deliver these e-com packages. And like Temu's like, yeah, you're going to get like $2.
Yeah,
$3,
John just had a question. So is this the ultimate A/B testing opportunity?
Oh, that's interesting.
Temu has this like active, engaged audience who are just like, yeah, I'll tell you whether or not this works better than that, than this, and then that, and this demographic, and if that person lives within 50 miles of a Tesco or what, it's kind of an amazing amount of data. And isn't that the thing? Like maybe we don't have the end game on their disruption because, well, I don't know if it would disrupt logistics more than e-commerce in general, but like eventually selling back this data, this information that they've gleaned from all of this testing that they can be doing with this captive audience who is there willingly. It's kind of a wild idea. Well, here's logistically, they are disrupting an idea of everything has to be fast shipping and you have to offer returns. I don't know what the return policy is for Shein and Temu, but I got to imagine it's no returns.
No, there's returns. They have returns, but it's a screwed up process. Because remember last time John and I were talking about it, and I looked into it, and that is like the biggest complaint in their whole ecosystem is the returns.
Right.
And no wonder, because they're losing $7 on a return. They're going to lose so much more. Like, yeah. Why even bother returning it? Just give them. They don't
though. I mean, their typical policy is starting to be just refund and keep, refund and destroy, right? For the most part.
Yeah.
Eventually, you get people abusing that system, right? So you're gonna have people just all the time returning, and because they know they can get it for free.
Yeah,
That's what used to happen with Wayfair. I don't know if you guys remember, Wayfair was like that at the very beginning, because when they didn't have the return policy figured out, you'd order a couch and you call in and you'd be like, "Hey man, this couch has a scratch on it," and they'll be like, "Send a picture," and be like, "Oh yeah, you can keep it. We'll send you a new one." And you're like, "Oh, okay."
Furnish your home. So how did you furnish your house? No.
Well, a lot of people did in the beginning. I don't know. At least that was a common thing that I remember when it first came out, and everybody was trying it. My thing is, I bought a desk, and I thought I was going to do that, and they're like, "No, could you pack it back up and send it?" I was like, "Damn it! I thought forget about it."
Never mind. I'll deal with the scratch. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I think that, you know, a lot of that stuff is going to get, as bad as it sounds from a customer experience point, that's where, you know, probably a little bit more cumbersome of a return policy. It will help gate that a little bit, because if you made it super easy, just go in the app and click the easy button to get a full return, you probably would get a lot more abuse. But if it's kind of a little bit more of a multi-step thing, people are honestly, they're just going to look at like sort of the ROI and be like, do I really need to go through all this? It's $4, $5, $6. Like, you know what I mean? Even for me personally, I return very, very little on Amazon. Like if
it's a pain to return stuff on Amazon.
Yeah, I don't really love it. And like, unless it's just something that's, you know, decently more expensive or whatever, if there's a certain threshold, like $20 or less or whatever it was, it's like, you know, maybe you just kind of let it, you know, it really has to be kind of bothering you to do the return.
So if they're not disrupting the logistics space in an innovative way, is there someone out there that is doing a better job? You know, I thought Shopify was going to be that one, but they kind of dropped that whole logistics piece on it. They had a cool app for a long time that you could aggregate a lot of your tracing, and I thought it was really innovative at the time, and it kind of disappeared. And now Flexport has obviously acquired all that information, but they're not doing well with it. And I know it's a hot topic on Flexport. Every time you mention Ryan,
for you, it's a hot no.
I just report the news. It's hot for the press, but it's definitely a hot topic that everybody wants to talk about because, you know, where's the innovation coming from? And I don't think it's Flexport. A lot of people don't think it's Flexport. So where does it come from? Amazon is becoming a lumbering beast. They can't innovate as quickly as they're growing. And they're having problems of trying to fix everything they've created already. So they're going kind of moving backwards that way. And, you know, Best Buy Marketplace is not the best, you know, place. Walmart Marketplace is starting to get traction, but 2 years before they make money. So who's really going to be the innovator in this space on the supply chain perspective is what I'm wondering.
Well, I guess even before you stand there is like, what do you consider innovative, right? Like, I mean, for a lot of this stuff, and you know, I've been writing a lot about it in the last, like, you know, let's call it 10 days, 2 weeks or whatever. You're getting a really strong resurgence of, you know, cost focused, you know, cost reductions, cost optimization, you know, reducing spends, from all of these massive retailers, no matter who they are, right? And that's really continuing, because to your point about innovation and about doing something differently, is that it's most likely going to be more expensive than what you're doing today. And everyone is in an interesting position of having to try to appeal to consumers' sense of value, which doesn't necessarily mean always the lowest price. But unless you have something that's really going to stand out or that is very differentiated from competitors, unfortunately, price does become the core of that value offer. So, you know, while there's so much cost pressure or sort of profitability pressure, I think you're not getting a lot of innovative thinking. So I guess that's my broad speaking, is like, what would you even consider innovation? Like, what would actually make you go like, oh wow, that's cool, or that's interesting, or whatever?
Like the Costco idea I set out this week of, you know, Costco group buying it within an area, so you can get Costco delivery within the same day. But
even that's not necessarily new. There's like there's probably more than one, but the one that catches my attention, there's a group in Australia called Mateship. They kind of do this exact thing. They have all of these retailers that are like on their platform, and when someone buys something in a building, let's say, or like in a neighborhood, it actually sends out like a notification to people then within that geography, like that building, or maybe a couple of neighbors or whatever it is, and it starts being like, hey, someone just bought, so who wants in on the free shipping?
That's fantastic. I love that. I've never even heard of that. I think it's something that is innovative.
I think it's a killer idea, actually, for sure. But you still get into this interesting thing of like, yeah, it should drop shipping and things like that, and it should, if it can drive the right kind of traffic, for sure. The only, I would say, problem, and it's not a problem with the offer, but it's like you have to have either a lot of retailers that are getting it onboarded, or at minimum, it really has to come from the same place. Because even if like I'm going to Dave's house and Dave just bought this like shirt or whatever, if that next order isn't like in the same location or the same source inventory org, it doesn't immediately become cheaper to facilitate the next order.
Yeah. I think the consumer is the next frontier of innovation, and maybe it's going back to the basics and doing some more foundational things. When I was at Home Delivery World last week, I went to a returns seminar, and it had the founders of return.com, and they're building out a consumer-centric returns platform. So you track everything, you can see all of the stuff you bought, all of the different dates and the return policies, chatbots that, chat to Amazon and do the return for you. So all you have to do is, wait, and you're going to have a donation opportunity, or you're going to have a return opportunity. And it was sort of interesting. And for me, I was like, oh man, this is going to make it easier for returns. But the metrics are fairly clear on what happens with that lifetime value of the customer when you have a good return experience that goes up considerably, which just circles us back to brand, right? Like, you have got to, as an e-commerce brand, you have got to create that relationship with your user. Like, I'm a different kind of e-commerce user, like you guys probably are, because you know how expensive it is for these brands to do the things, right? Like, yeah. I understand that there is a cost. There's a human cost, there's a labor cost, right? Whether that's in just dollars for money or working conditions or things like that. There's the environmental cost of executing on the thing, and then there's the dollars and cents cost to the brand. And if I want my brand, if I care about my brand, I'm going to try to make responsible decisions. And I think that's that next frontier of e-commerce is that marketing. Ever since Don Draper, the marketing has become the thing. And even before then, we would buy things from people we literally knew, before, mass manufacturing. So like, it's really a circle back to the beginning on that relationship piece and that consumer like engagement piece, which again is obviously more and more difficult because you've got Temu gamifying the app and spending all the money on the on the advertising. $3 billion this year it's forecasted that they're going to spend on advertising.
I'm so eager to jump in before John jumps in, because I want to get in there, because I can see him holding a thought back. So I'm like, I gotta jump in. No, I think that's a fantastic point. And I think returns is something that is often neglected, and we've talked about happy returns and all this. But what I find is a cool use case point that even Cynthia just brought it up is people returning back to the stores. There's a company in Canada called Princess Auto. And Princess Auto is out of Winnipeg, and they will accept anything as a return. And it's everybody who shops at Princess Auto is like, they love that store because of the return policy. There's a famous story of a man who bought a cylinder 25 years ago, and he called Princess Auto and said, hey, this cylinder broke. They verified it was bought from there. He was able to come in without the receipt and get a brand new cylinder even after 25 years. And that cylinder now sits in their museum as a display of their commitment to the customer experience and how great it is. And then people have like groups that they go together to go shop at Princess Auto because it's an experience for them, and they are treated at a different level and a higher level. I know John's probably he's irking a little bit on this. I love the Princess Auto story.
Is it an auto parts store?
Yeah. It's kind of, yeah. I mean, I think
for an auto parts store. I love that.
I think it's borderline. It's borderline, because the thing is, what that Cinderella story sounds really great until you also realize that they have a very niche customer base. And I would actually argue that honestly, most of the time they also sell on price, right? Their prices are lower. They typically have decent value on what they're selling. Sure, they do returns, but I think where they get a huge sort of following is just because of the fact that you're right. It's a very specific store with specific types of goods. And the type of consumer that goes there there's not like necessarily like a lot of competition, for what they're doing, like the way they do it. I don't mind the store. I like it. I've actually, gone there a few times for different things, but I don't think the return policy, like, or having those types of return policies, because for example, when I used to work at Future Shop / Best Buy,
Yeah.
you could see that logic of being like, oh, keep the customer happy. And I watched, even in the years that I was there, the customer profile change, like as Amazon was getting more popular, and as like kind of like the early showrooming, where it was like, sort of window shopping in the store, seeing, touching, looking at a product, and then going to buy on Amazon for price, before they were being very competitive with the online price, because they anyways, that was a different strategy. But the point is that I watched customers that were getting those levels of care, and it honestly wasn't having a positive impact.
I think a lot of it comes down, and you touched upon it briefly. There's two diverging ideas here. I think one, you become the everything store, which is the Amazon way. The other one is an everything store. You try to get everything in your marketplace, and you're making bits and pieces, or you become very niche oriented of a service offering, and you provide an exponential service on that specific niche. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of great little companies that are doing that, and they make sure their product is isolated from the everything stores. And then they can provide an exponential amount of service and a logistical position that is unique to them. Like some of these, like for me, I love unboxing things and that whole logistical process, how it comes in, how it's all delivered. And those companies that do it well, I think, have a far greater repeat and margin dollar success than someone like Shein and Temu that we've talked about earlier. And yeah, they might be in the billions, but they're in the billions of losses. And these guys might be in the hundreds of millions, but they're in the profit range of where you want to be. And that experience, I think, comes down to delivering when people want it, how it's delivered, how it's packaged, the experience, the tactile piece that you have with it, what used to be, and to bring it back, what Apple used to do it back in the day when Steve Jobs was there. When you got a package from Apple or went to the store, you had a follow-up phone call. You had all these customer service little things that going, hey, how was the product? Did you need help setting it up? Did you need this? Do you have any of these questions? I think those are going to be the next steps of not just getting the product to the person, is how do we connect that experience of receiving it and having a phone call being like, hey, I noticed that you received the product an hour ago. How was it? You want to go through about it? You want to talk about it? Anything along those lines to make you feel connected to that product a little bit more and connecting that logistical.
Well, and there's a use case for that Happy Robot AI voice thing, like, and then if it's like a really complicated question, just be like, okay, hold on, I need to get an expert on the line. And then you turn it over to a human. And there's a way to leverage technology to provide that higher level of service without, significantly ramping up cost. But I do think the future of innovation is going to be going deeper. Like we talked a little bit about Flexport, them trying to disrupt everything. That's too much. Like find one problem and go deeper. And so with the brands, like I'm an REI fanatic. I will buy everything on REI at REI.
So did you enjoy their Memorial Day sale?
I
don't know what REI is.
Y'all,
it's like Mech.
But I mean, because I'm going on this hike to Tour de Mont Blanc, I have spent just gobs of money prior to the Memorial Day sale, prepping all of my gear to make sure I'm set. So they have gotten the cash from me this year. But I can buy anything and know that I can return it. And some of these are high dollar items. And I'm like, if I take this backpacking and it doesn't work, I can return it. And then not only is it not going to end up in the garbage, because they're going to resell it to somebody in their garage sale or in their resale store. Like it like takes care of all of my concerns as a consumer. And I know they're not perfect. They have issues and those are decently well publicized, but they're hitting 80% of the mark of what I'm looking for in a brand partner as a consumer.
No, for sure. So let's see if we can help everyone watching, what would you guys actually say? Like, can you name one thing that you might actually be impressed by or think would be an innovative way to see something? You mentioned the Costco thing. So just what about you? What would be something that like from a logistics side, especially, that you would be impressed by the execution and the innovation of the experience?
I don't have a specific, like, they should do this, but I think the area most ripe with opportunity is returns. There is something that can be done and should be done and will be done. And I'm sure, like, this is, if I had VC money, I would be pushing it in this direction. The returns problem is $1 billion situation. And there's got to be some more simple, holistic end-to-end solutions in this space that can be next. And I think that that's the place where we're going to see that next bit of evolution.
For me, I think it's when someone can nail down the delivery at a specific time and date.
Oh,
so
yes.
For me, it's like I forget dates all the time, but when I remember, like, I want to buy something for the wife for her birthday, and I want to buy it today. There's a sale on for it. I don't want to see it until that date. So I have it taken care of. I check it off. It delivers on the date at a specific time. I have it 6 months in advance. That is, for me, the ultimate, like, I will buy from any company that does that, because it takes away so many headaches. Because you can set up your Christmas gifts today for all your customers. You can do so many different things.
Oh, so you want to bring back layaway?
Almost.
I guess,
layaway's a little bit different. It's a little, because
I guess
because you're paying for the whole amount today.
Yeah, you just want to store it.
And I want to store it, right?
Yeah, I agree with you on the buy. I mean, the longer term, I think, becomes challenging, but I definitely think that more companies need to be like, hey, it's Monday, I don't actually want it, or I'm out of town, or I happen to be traveling, or I happen to be this, and I'm thinking about it, so I want to get it done. I definitely think there's an opportunity and a huge need for, like, I want it Friday or Saturday or next Monday or something like that, as opposed to just like the second you hit buy, it goes, through the machine, and it's usually 1 or 2 days.
Or an in-transit delivery. Like, if you're out traveling and you need something because you forgot it at home, and you're like, hey, I'm going to be in New York City on a Friday at 2:00. I need this product there. It delivers you at the hotel. You check in, you're like, yeah, your package is here. It's ready for you. It's set up the way you want it, because you're only there for a specific time and you're rolling on through. Having that level of control of your user and consumer logistics piece, I think, is, for me, that's going to be like the place.
Yeah, and that one I like too, because I agree that it needs to happen more, and lockers should be able to facilitate that.
Yes.
But, right, there's that big gap between, like, the locker not being an option when you're buying it, and then there's still that issue of the fact of that gap, because typically, like, then something can only sit in a locker for so long, so you're still limited as to when you could do it. So I do think that there's still, like, that double gap, but we need, in North America anyways, a little bit better sort of openness to the systems and sharing of the systems than what we do today. I mean, they do a better job in Europe. Obviously, there's some really great products that allow that. So I think that's. I definitely think.
Where's Andre? Because he'd probably jump in here with a whole bunch of different comments.
Andre probably would have lots of solutions.
But
one,
do you guys,
I was going to say, Mia agrees.
Do you guys do lockers?
A little bit, not too much.
You don't see as much. I mean, North America really in general, like, for lockers, is like, why? Like, we've created a system where it's like drop and go, and if it gets lost, the retailer sends another one. Like, one of the big barriers, like, or not the big motivators in Europe, is just because of the fact that most of the delivery is attempted to be, like, actually delivered, and it's the consumer that takes the risk if you've given authorization to leave it and stuff like that. So I think that that's a big change. One thing that I would love to see on a sustainability side, especially to help things out, I would love to see a shift. Like, right now, all deliveries are let's say time-based, right? Like, the trigger is time. I made a 1-day promise. I made a 2-day promise. What I would love to see, that I think is an interesting blend, and where, when you're in dense areas or whatever, it still makes sense. But I'd love to see, like, threshold or trigger deliveries where, volume has to accumulate to a certain point, like, or a certain amount of orders have to come in before an area would be serviced. I know you don't like it as much because it feels like a negative thing on the customer experience, but it's like
huge. Like, I want my product. I want it now. I'm not going to wait till John buys his.
No,
but
it's not me, but it's like,
always.
But
What's
it's
that?
like, what are you gonna? But they're already trying to do it now. It's like, hey, it's like, guys, here's like, look how they position it. Like they're killing themselves from the start. Like, oh, do you want it? Do you want it in the next 5 seconds? Do you want it tomorrow, 2 days, or it's like, or should we wait
Who
10
actually goes
days?
lower? Everybody wants it next, like next.
I
week.
did
I
it
agree.
just.
But
No, but
we're
I
the
just
exception.
did
We're
this
the exception.
weekend.
No, most people would be more, I think they would be more open to it if you could say, hey, typically, like, we see your address, like we see your location. Typically, like a delivery never takes more than, like, let's say 2 or 3 days because of the density in there. But because sustainability, rather than actually hoping that everybody is just going to pick the green option, just do it on thresholds and give that better clarity and certainty.
The companies can't even deliver the same product that I bought from the same company. I have like 6 Amazon trucks rolled in through the day. They can't consolidate at one. You're asking them to do it. No, I think they have.
Well, I was just gonna say, like, the only retailer I would trust to do that and I would delay delivery on is Amazon. So like they offered me, they're like, hey, I can be here in an hour tomorrow, or you can consolidate all your deliveries on Sunday. And I was like, yeah, cool. Sunday's awesome. But I trust that Amazon, at least where I live, downtown Denver,
Yeah, but
if they say they'll deliver it on Sunday, they will.
But even then, that wasn't because of the fact that it was better for the mileage. It wasn't better for the warehouse. The only reason that happened was because you ordered something that wasn't available till Sunday. So, like, I mean, it had nothing to do with the actual network.
That day.
No, not on. I would guarantee you, if you went in there and you actually tried to do it, you would see like the summary, and then you would see like one thing.
One of them is
like
on Sunday
or something.
Yeah.
Like 100%.
Maybe.
That's where I think that there's that opportunity for changing the way that consumers think about sustainability. So it's like you don't really ask them to make the choice. It's kind of like, hey, we're going to do it this way unless you really opt out. And there's a really interesting psychology around the opt-ins and opt-outs and like when people do what, and where people are totally fine when it's the default option. Like organ donation is a great example of this, where when given the choice, opt-in rates for organ donation are they're significantly lower, which you would infer that, hey, people aren't okay with it and they don't want to do it, and it's not for them, which is fine. That's their choice. Except when you change the default to be you're opted in and you have to opt out, a wildly reduced percentage of people actually opt out versus the delta of the people that opt in. So it's like, no, it often people are okay with things, but honestly, more like if you think about the world today, everything you do from the time you wake up to the time you go to bed, you're being inundated with information and you're being asked to make hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of decisions. And any opportunity a person can avoid making a decision that they don't feel is like a high impact to them in the moment, they're going to do that. They're going to opt out of the decision. And that's what really is the problem.
I think people are just not reading that clearly, and they're not paying attention to it. I don't think they're making that extra check.
Well, it's the same thing with 401k enrollment.
Yeah.
Like
pay attention. Yeah. Pay attention to what you're doing. Like very often, like when you're doing a form, they'll still be very clear that you are opted in, you are doing this. This is the situation. You just have to check this box. It's usually right above your signature box in bold or something like that. I don't think it's a reading problem. I just really think it's like no, but I'm serious. It's not that people are like, oh man, I couldn't figure that out. It was too complicated.
No, but they're just like, it's another form. My thing is it's another form, and people are just running through it like, how do I get to the end of the checkbox? And they're like, organ donation, no, okay, I'm good. You know, and not realizing that it's no, I don't want to. Like, you know what I mean? The wording of it, they're not taking the second anymore. To your point, because they're so inundated with information all the time, nobody's reading shit anymore. Like, when's the last time you read a user agreement when you signed on to a website?
but that's also different though too, because it's like sometimes you read the user agreement, you're like, whoa, no, I don't agree, and they're like,
never done that once.
No, but I'm saying even if you do,
reading is hard. John agrees with me. Done on that. Subject.
No, but I'm saying like even at the end of the day, if you're presented with like some kind of terms and you want to shop on that website, they haven't really offered an option. It's either like agree and participate, or like I'm gonna redirect you to like sesamestreet.com. Like, you know what I mean? Like there's no choice. So that's why people agree, is because there really isn't a choice. That, you know what I mean?
Yeah, there's no choice. Like, don't read it. You're just wasting your time, because if you want to use the website, you're gonna have to click agree.
I think
Yeah, you don't get to click like, oh, let me talk to the ombudsman and have this discussion. Like that's not even an option.
I think an interesting one to kind of segue to yours, John, and kind of bring it back to our logistics conversation would be you get to pick the mode and see how much CO2 savings you would have by each mode you pick. So, you buy something that's in California, you click intermodal, it's going to take an extra 3 days to get to you, but you're going to save X amount on your CO2. Or if you need a next day, knowing that you're going to be burning a hell of a lot more CO2, if you're okay with that, and make that conscious, visible difference. Or like if you're in dense Colorado, or if you're in Colorado, I want to deliver it on a bike today. I want to be saving that aspect of it, right? And no, John doesn't.
I mean,
I just think people.
The company that I pay for composting, they pick up my compost by bicycle, and I pay extra to use that organization instead of a different one. So,
wow!
Come on, John. Come on. Get in there.
I just think that like I agree that that's interesting. I just think that when you're putting that much onus on people and hoping that you're going to get that many people with subjective perspectives making a similar decision, you're just asking for you're probably asking for a lot of differentiation and probably like that's a very principled position, right?
Yeah.
And to bet on everyone being that principled is less likely, in my opinion, than just being like, no, I'm going to design a better system that I think is better or is more sustainable or is healthier. And you know what, like people are just gonna, I'll deal with the people who want to opt out, or I'll give them options for the people who want to opt out, but I'm going to try by default to get as many people to opt in as possible.
So
and Shein and Temu are examples of non-principled, different principled consumers, right? Folks are okay with ESG question marks. Folks are okay with having a big impact on climate. They're for a very low price. Everyone's got a price.
I was going to ask you actually, Jess, because we talked about it before. Was it FedEx or UPS Marketplace?
FedEx.
Let's close off in the last like 10 minutes here on that, because I think that's interesting and it kind of does a nice closure on the logistics conversation of disrupting the disruptors.
Yeah, and if FedEx does something disruptive with it, it could be really interesting in the logistics space, because understanding the data that FedEx has, it's very logistical, right? They know last mile delivery, certainly in North America, right? So can they leverage that information to create value in this marketplace, aside from just giving retailers another place to put their SKU, right? I think maybe John, you said they're all printing the label. They don't care. They do their own fulfillment.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like the marketplace thing, I'm not a huge fan of that way, just because realistically, like if I'm a merchant or whatever, I can be on Amazon, I can be on Walmart, I can be on Kroger, I can be on eBay, I can be on whatever. And realistically, from a back end fulfillment perspective, like if you are doing your own fulfillment, I mean, obviously a little bit different when you're doing like FBA, like fulfilled by Walmart and all of these different things. But all of these things just get piped in. Like, and that's one thing. You talk to any 3PL, what do they say? Oh, our system connects to everybody, right? I connect to Shopify and BigCommerce and Amazon and this and that. And it all just, essentially comes to the same place where labels get printed and then it's getting shipped out with like whoever. So I think marketplaces are kind of, themselves, I don't know how much of an impact that they have, because I think, that like Tesco is a grocery store in the UK. Like, oh, we're going to challenge Amazon because now we're putting out our marketplace. Like, yeah, I can imagine the droves of, UK citizens that are just like, thank God. I was waiting for Tesco to solve this problem for me. Like, no, like that's not happening. Like no one was feeling that. Like, you know what I mean? So they just become like another channel. Yeah, someone's going to drive some sales on it because it's more opportunity than destination shopping or something like that. I'm not as much of a fan, or I don't think that marketplaces have enough enough control, because at the end of the day, they all become subjected to the fact that like if FedEx wants to do something different, let's say slow down deliveries, and then that same customer can go on Amazon or Walmart or Tesco or whoever and be like, how come the price is different? Or how come the service is different? Well, I'm going to go over here. You know what I mean? So until you get a lot of unified activity, I don't think a marketplace themselves can do it. I think retailers can. I think Amazon, Walmart, as an example, I think they could start changing expectations.
I think, and I'm going to throw a wrench into this whole piece. I think what we haven't seen, and I hope to see, is someone like TikTok, Facebook, Google, with their analytics of people's personalities, whereabouts, and everything, come into this logistical space and provide a way to create a marketplace on that aspect. Because nobody has more data than those guys. Nobody has more data than the social media. They know where you are at all times. They're listening to your conversation at all times. We haven't.
They know who you're going to marry already.
They know who you're going to marry already, or the type of person within your proximity.
No,
right?
They know who. They figured it out.
But you know what I mean?
That's the next frontier.
The matchmaking of product to person to logistical services. I think those are the ones that we haven't seen. And you've heard a little bit of grumblings. Like Apple kind of went to the wayside because they don't have as much data. They're losing that front. They've lost so much money with their Apple Car, and now they're trying to figure out something different. But I still think Google, Facebook, and TikTok have a position to play here. What do you guys think?
Well, TikTok's trying.
Sure.
You know, they're out there marketplacing. Now they have a lot of regulatory uncertainty, like with what's going to happen if they get banned in the US. Like, I don't know, that heated up for a while and it's been quiet for a little bit. I'm not actually sure where that is.
They're fighting it. They're just fighting it.
I am a social media user. I actually really love social media. And if I'm on Instagram, because I don't TikTok because I'm middle-aged, but like sometimes I would love, like, give me the links to these products. The problem is that they're all linked to fast fashion on Amazon or Temu or Shein, and that's not something that I do. But if it linked to a brand that I could support, I'd be like, yeah.
Or here's like 6 different products from 6 different companies that look like this one. Pick from, high luxury to fast fashion. Pick your product. Yeah. That would.
I mean, people might like that. I'm always like, show me this exact thing.
Oh, John's not convinced. He's got he doesn't have. Oh, we didn't do this for.
No, I think TikTok for sure is dangerous, like with their data and stuff like that. Not so much. I think the dangerous thing about TikTok, like in the sense of disruption or innovation, isn't because of they have so much data. It's gross. That's why like the governments are starting to be like, guys. Yeah, they're like, guys, we need to have a chat about what's being recorded here. No, but what they have actually that nobody else has is, for the first time, you're actually going to get brands or platforms, whichever way you want to think about it. They're going to have far more control in really shaping demand in a way that a customer doesn't have any perception of, right? Because if you're watching TV in a traditional sense and you're sitting in front of the screen and you're getting bombarded by ads, you kind of have this sense that you're being sold to, right? Mm-hmm. Like you get that. When you're scrolling TikTok endlessly and the algorithm is just very strategically dropping the right kind of videos in that For You feed, and you don't really realize that you're actually getting subjected to highly customized advertising in some ways, that's a very different world than just being like, oh, here's this water gun commercial again, like not 7th time today. Like it's very, very different, especially then too when you have so many influencers and so many different people that could be then getting in on the same types of product. All of a sudden you go from feeling like you're being sold to just like, I want in on this trend that's obviously cool. Yeah, very different.
So I don't know if you guys heard, but Amazon has purchased the rights to NHL Hockey Night, Monday Night Hockey, as a way to advertise it and provide the live streaming. I am guessing a lot of these different channels are getting into these live sports to be able to be like, hey, I saw the hockey jersey, click on it, you can buy it right now, and make it part of that experience. As you're watching something, your eyesight goes to it because they will be able to follow your eyesight in the future. Be like, oh, you like that player. Do you want to purchase that jersey, or you want the whole ensemble?
But did you know, I didn't know this up until recently, but did you know that the ads that you see like around the rink on TV are different than what's actually on the boards? And it can be different on different channels. Oh man, I was blown away when I was like, what? Because I had been at the arena and I was like, That was not there. Like that was not there. What's going on?
That's age old technology. You're so behind.
I don't know. The Premier League needs to get in on that, because when I watch European soccer, I just see a bunch of European advertisements around the ring or the pitch. So they're going to have to get
probably
in on
once
that.
again the EU actually being like, no, we're stepping in and we're going to have some rules, guys.
Regulate this stuff.
Yeah.
We're down to like the 1 hour mark. Closing thoughts, comments. How do you guys want to close it off today?
I think I'm gonna go here, and I think our next topic should be returns for July. I think we should deep dive returns.
John?
Yeah, if we want to get into returns, I mean, it's a messy one for sure. Actually, I had a great conversation with a new connection recently on returns, because he had done a podcast after RCC store. And, you know, I've got some pretty pointed returns on between like the value of over processing versus finding other ways to change behavior. So I think it's a cool topic that has a lot of nuance.
I think if we're going to do it, we're going to bring a guest in, and we'll find someone to kind of talk about that and do a nice segment. Or maybe we'll bring ChatGPT to talk about returns like we did on the good old G back. So, thank you very much, everybody, for joining today. I had a great time as always. I think we had a great conversation. I got nothing else.
All right.
All right.
Bye, everybody.